Jai Meher Baba, Jai Baba to everyone. I'd like to start by talking about Eruch's life. Um, we were all, those of you that met Eruch, we were also very fortunate. Eruch Jessawalla called himself a most fortunate slave. He chose the path of freedom in coming to Baba. Eruch was born on October 13th, 1916, in Bombay to Zoroastrian parents, Behram Shah and Gaimai Jessawala. The first time Eruch remembered meeting Baba was in 1925. He was 9 years old, and his family made a trip to Ahmednagar. His mother, Gaimai's family, lived at Akbar Press, a place that I stayed at in the 70s in India, and maybe many of you did as well. Her brother, who was at Akbar Press, told Gaimai they met someone who resembled Zoroaster. She wanted to meet this person. So in 1925, they went. They were in a horse carriage in Ahmednagar when Eruch, who was sitting in the back, started to fall off of the horse carriage. He seriously hurt his elbow when he fell. Interestingly enough, Baba was behind the horse carriage, and he picked up Eruch, comforted him, put Duni ash on his elbow, wrapped his handkerchief around it while he held Eruch closely on his and lovingly on his lap. Eruch was amazed that this total stranger, who certainly did not remain a stranger, could express such love and such concern. From 1925 onward, until they left Mary Lodge, which was the Jessawala home in Nagpur, Meher Baba would visit their family home. In August 1930 at Nagpur, Baba told Gaimai, "Eruch is my son. I will give you another." Baba would play games with Eruch, but Eruch would snuck out once because he wanted to be with his teammates, which had been in his obligation. And then when Baba learned about this, he said, go play with your team. But when you came back, what Baba did was he had Eruch decipher his alphabet board. And Eruch was a natural. And obviously in later years, he became Baba's chief interpreter. In 1936, Eruch was 20 years old and he was studying in college in Benares. Baba asked him, "What do you want to become?" Eruch replied he wanted to study engineering. Baba asked Eruch, "Would you be my engineer instead?" In May 1938, Baba sent a telegram to Eruch saying to come to him immediately in Panchgani. His mother said, "Hurry, hurry." But Eruch was actually a wonderful gardener. And when his father would go on trips, he would bring back different plants. So the heat that day was 120 degrees, and Eruch was busy protecting the plants. But then an hour later, another telegram came from Baba from a different railway station. And it said, come immediately to Panchgani. So his mother said, "Hurry, hurry." And so he took the car, which he would have, I guess, used to pick up his father when his father came back from his travels, and he just left the car in the lot, left the keys in the glove compartment, and went on the railway. Well, when Papa Jessawala returned, he was surprised to see no Eruch, but the car was there with the keys in the parking lot in the car. So when Eruch arrived and with Baba, after a brief conversation, Baba said, "If I were to ask you to leave everything behind and come and stay with me, is it possible for you to do that?" And Eruch replied, "By your grace, everything is possible." Baba then asked Eruch to come on August 1st, 1938. Then Baba said, "Is it possible for all of your family to leave everything and come and follow me?" Again, Eruch replied, "By your grace, everything is possible." "That is good," said Baba. "Tell them to come also, and when you come, bring a trunk, a sleeping bag for each, and bring the car. Only those things." When Eruch returned to tell his parents, his mother was overjoyed. She leapt with joy. His father, who had created extensive property and assets for the family, shrugged his shoulders and beautifully said, "All this I have done for you all, that you may have happiness. But if you find greater happiness at his feet, then I am all the more happy." Then his father said he was too busy to wind up the estate, so he asked Eruch to be responsible and said he would sign all the papers. It was May 23rd, 1938, so Eruch had a very short time to wind up the estate and all other matters. Later, Baba sent a message, "Tell your father that his retirement is due in 6 months, so he should not retire prematurely." On August 1st, 1938, the whole family came to Baba. Papa Jessawala came for 1 week before he retired from his position and then returned again. When Eruch arrived, he assisted Baba with the Mad Ashram, which had recently been brought from Rahuri. Eruch said this training was a precursor to his life with Baba. Then, shortly thereafter, Eruch went on the Blue Bus tours, and after Elizabeth's new car arrived, Eruch drove the Blue Bus. After the rest of the family came to Baba in 1938, Baba asked them to live in Jabalpur and then Bangalore. In 1943, he asked them to move to Pune for 15 days. They ended up living in Bindra House, and those 15 days lasted many, many years, enough years so that we were indeed fortunate to be able to go to Bindra House, which I just remember as there was so much love in that place. I have such fond memories of my one visit there. In Eruch's book, That's How It Was, Eruch shares 2 intimate times with Meher Baba. Eruch said that although I spent so much time with Baba, I almost never had the opportunity to simply sit and stare at him. One day when Eruch went to help Baba, Baba gestured, "No, you sit." So Eruch sat there near Baba's chair, simply looking at Baba. Not a word was said. They sat in silence, simply staring at each other. Eruch found cool tears streaking down his cheeks. Nothing was ever said, but that remains one of Eruch's treasured memories of his time with Meher Baba. Before the beginning of the new life, Baba wanted a period of relaxation, and this is the second remembrance he had. Eruch suggested a place on the coast called Vengurla. Baba sent the women to the beach. Baba and Eruch went to contact a must. Instead of walking 3 miles to reach the distant town, Baba asked Eruch to cross the inlet waters in one of the dugout canoes the fisher boys used. Eruch was nervous about this, and the boat capsized. Eruch caught hold of Baba, and they safely reached the shore. Eruch had to leave Baba alone to get him fresh clothes. After contacting the must, Baba said, "As you gave me your helping hand today to help me out of these murky waters, a day will come when I will lend you my hand and pull you out of the muck of illusion." In 1949, Eruch was one of the New Life companions who was with Baba throughout the entire New Life. Whenever they traveled, Eruch was with Baba as his interpreter and companion. Eruch was exhausted by the new life. In 1952, Baba asked Eruch to come with him to the Meher Spiritual Center. Eruch felt his body could not handle this. Instead, Baba sent Eruch and Pendu to Hamirpur and Andhra State to tell the villagers about him. It turned out to be quite an exhausting trip, and Eruch was unsure of what they would say because he had never spoken about Baba. Baba told Eruch to stand up, remember me, and speak. In the 1950s, Eruch worked on God Speaks. He wrote the 9th chapter of that book, working from a chart by Meher Baba under Baba's direct supervision, and wrote the book's conclusion. Eruch's stories of his life with Meher Baba, that's how it was, I don't know if you can see it, was also published during Eruch's lifetime. In 1956, Eruch visited the Meher Center, and many of us have been in his room in Baba's house. Later in 1956, there was the car accident in Satara, which was very difficult for Eruch. Eruch returned to the Meher Center with Baba and others in 1958. Eruch was intimately involved with all of Meher Baba's activities as his closest companion. In the 1960s, Eruch spent summers at Guru Prasad. In 1962, he was intimately involved with the East-West Gathering. In 65, the Eastern Sahavas. In 69, when Baba dropped his body, Eruch spent 7 days at Mehrabad, welcoming those who offered to pay respects to Baba's body. Eruch saw that Begin the Begin, as requested by Baba, was played 7 times. Here's what Baba said about Eruch, whom he called his Peter. If at all I enjoy the company of anyone, it is Eruch. Do you know how very important Eruch is for my work? By remaining by my side, he serves me 24 hours a day, keeps watch by my side, reads my signs and gestures, looks after my smallest chores, and in addition, tackles correspondence. Nowadays, I ask Eruch for his free and frank opinion whenever I am in doubt about my dealings with others. Baba called Eruch a gem and said Eruch was matchless. Eruch survived Meher Baba by 32 years. He continued to live at Mehrabad and worked for the Avatar Meher Baba Trust in the trust office in Ahmednagar until 2001. He continued to be an inspiration for followers of Meher Baba from the East and from the West until the end of his life. On August 31st, 2001, "Oh Baba," slipped from his lips. His beloved's name was the last word Eruch spoke aloud. Now I'd like to read something sent from the Men and Women Mandali and his Meherazad family. Beloved Avatar Meher Baba fulfilled his promise to Eruch Jessawalla on 31st August 2001 at 2:31 a.m. when he gave Eruch his hand and pulled him out of the muck of illusion to live eternally in him. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. And before I end, I have something that Tavana Brown sent that I'd like to read. Today marks 19 years since Eruch passed away from our midst to be reunited with his beloved Lord, Avatar Meher Baba. And it has often struck me that it was on this same date, 31st August 1949, that Baba held the New Life meeting in Meherabad, in which each of the men were required to sign whether they would willingly accept all the conditions of the New Life. There was no question of ifs, ands, or buts allowed. Baba said each one on his own had to decide to write yes, that they wished to accompany Meher Baba as one of his companions, or no, they would not. Yes or no, nothing else. Eruch wrote yes. After Baba had returned to Merazat from his New Life wanderings, he gathered the Mandali together and spoke to them about Eruch. Alaba recalled Baba remarking, Eruch's obedience is such that if I were to tell him to cut himself into pieces, he would find a way to do it. He is the life of the New Life. What better words could describe Eruch than those of his Lord speaking of what it means to live a life of surrenderance. Eruch's life is such an example that it shall continue to shine out for all of those who long to love and strive to live for the Lord for the next 700 years. And finally, just to let everyone know, Devana's manuscript for Eruch's book is with Shariar Press and is in the next step of editing. Jai Meher Baba.
Keep it short. I just remember one that was very poignant for me. I was in Mandali Hall. This would have been probably 88 or 89. And Eruch, you know how he loved to ask questions of those in the hall? Eruch said, "What will they call us?" And it was kind of like, what's that? He said, "We call them Christians, we call them Muslims, Hindus. What will they call us?" And I thought, what is this question? So I said, people had all sorts of answers and all that, and it was kind of a jolly time. And I said, Eruch, I don't even understand this question. He said, "Why not?" I said, "Well, didn't Baba say he was going to bring all of the faiths together, all the religions together like beads on one string? Won't it just be us?" And then Mani interjected like that, and she said, "You know, in Ahmednagar, they call us Jai Babas." And then Mani took the conversation off in a different direction. And so after the meeting in the hall there, I got up and I went out on the porch. There was like a little koi pond kind of thing. It was kind of a tank, like a cement tank with fish in it. And Eruch came out of the hall and he was looking around and he saw me and he came right over to me. He said, "Aran, what you said is right. Tomorrow, I want you to say it again. Come back and I want you to say it again. I'll call on you." I was like, "Whatever you want, anything you want." So the next day, somebody had brought a film, a brand new film of Baba, and the hall was packed, completely packed. And everybody wanted to watch the film. And he said, "Wait, where's Laurent?" And I said, I'm right here. He said, "Say it out." So I had to tell that same thing. And then he said, "Good, watch the film." Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, everyone. Jai Baba to Eruch, to his great love and service to Baba. I always felt that Eruch was serving Baba like a mother, with motherly feeling, because he was wiping his putting his pillows and so much out there for him, like a big mother. I want to tell two things. One is the first time I came to Meherabad. I didn't know anything of anything. I only came after 2 months of knowing Baba's name, reading Etzion Becker's book that I found in a used bookstore about the Prem Ashram. And I read also a book by Bauji, While the World Slept. So I didn't know anything of anyone, and no Mandalian, no hardly any Mandali women. I just knew Baba. And when I came, of course, I was crying. I didn't know why I was crying. I thought I was crying for something else, but the tears kept pouring down my eyes, and I just couldn't stop the crying. And it was the time that Eruch, and I came to the trust office to register, and Eruch just had his tea, so they invited me to tea. So I didn't know who Eruch was, and I was there, and they were serving tea, and there were all sorts of people around the table, and he gave biscuits out, and I was trying to gulp the tea and eat biscuits, and the tears were coming down, and I was feeling so uncomfortable that I was crying, that they think that I'm sad, and it's not that I'm sad, it's just that these tears going down. And I sort of excused myself, and Eruch said, don't worry, we'll cry with you. So that was so sweet. And that was my first meeting with Eruch. And my last meeting with Eruch was, I was fortunate to be in the Mandali Hall, I think in one of his very, very last talks in Mandali Hall in August. In mid-August, because that was the time I got vacation from my kindergarten and I could come to Mehrabad. So Eruch, and I have been given, it's interesting that also at the beginning of my story and the end of meeting Eruch was also connected in some way to Etzion, because Etzion gave me his video camera to take videos. Now the camera was completely terrible and not handleable. But in this last talk, I did take the video. It didn't come out so well, but I gave it to someone to process it and to send to the trust. And in this talk, Eruch was very, very beautiful. And he was recollecting the time that Baba called him to Mabaleshwar, to Panchgani, to ask him if he would stay with him and if his family would stay with him. And what was so touched me in this talk, while I was filming with this very problematic video, Eruch telling this story about him and his family, he suddenly very strongly and deeply turned to everyone and said, just think about it. If you would ask your family now to leave everything and come to Baba, would they do that? And this is what turned the story from just a story in a book, you know, that you read about Eruch and the wonderful family and how great Baba lovers they were, into a very practical question and to very practical living conditions. As this whole family, just in one word, they just uprooted everything and went to Baba is one word. So when he turned that question to all the people, it became so practical just to think if our families would do the same thing. So it was very, very profound. The other story that I was wanting to say was this very touching story of how Baba sunk into the deep water and Eruch just pulled him out, and what Karen told in her story, in her very beautiful introduction to Eruch. Thank you, Karen. It was just very, very beautiful and very loving. And so this one really stayed in my mind. So yesterday I was thinking what I'm going to say, and I saw all sorts of meetings with Eruch that were very profound, but these are the 2 or 3 that I wanted to bring. The last one is when Baba says, and in Lord Meher, it comes online, it comes in page 2694, and he says, after being helped up on the bank, Baba turned to Eruch and said something to him which he never forgot. Just as you have helped me out of this dirty water today, so also one day I will help you out of the filth of Maya.
In 1970, I went to Mehrabad and Mirzad for the first time on my own after the 69 Darshan. And I was still devastated by not having gotten to meet Baba in the body this time. And I cried all the time. I mean, it was very embarrassing. I had to spend many days just lying in that resting room because I felt that I was disrupting things in Mandalay Hall by just weeping continually. And so one day I went up to Eruch. Oh, I think I'm going to weep again. And I said, Eruch, I'm so sorry, to be, disrupting things in Mandalay Hall. I just can't get over not having gotten to be with Baba. And I just weep whenever I think of him. And Eruch said, oh, do not apologize for that. That is your longing. Cultivate the weeping. So that was very powerful. And I did, and still do sometimes. But a few years later, my father died around the same time as Baba left the body and left me some money. And I was sort of at a loss as to what to do with myself. So I sort of wandered around the world, and I would stop in India every so often. And one year I was there, and I had been there for a while, and I was getting ready to leave, and Eruch said, so what are you going to do now? And I said, or where are you going to go now? Something like that. And I said, well, I don't really know. I said, I'm going back to the States for a while, and then I'll just see what I'm going to do next. And Eruch looked at me very, very firmly, and he said, you need to bind your lower self in order to free your higher self. I was sort of taken aback. I said, Eruch, what does that mean? He said, it means go home, get a job, get married, have children. And so I did.
In 97, Marvin and I went together, and Eruch started asking me when he would greet people, we'd stand in line, he'd give us an embrace and all those beautiful things. And he would ask me, who is this girl? Who are you? And I would answer, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm that, all these other things, artist, musician. And then in 99, he kept pressing me. And every time I would go, he'd embrace me and say, he'd shake me and say, who is this girl? And then I looked at him and I said, I am his. And he slaps me on the back and he said, yes. And that's my story about Eruch. It's so beautiful. And I don't want to take up too much time because everybody else has probably incredibly beautiful stories, but just remembering beautiful Eruch. Jai Baba.
We used to go visit Bao in his office, and there were a couple of people, most of you knew who they were, that Bao would slam the hammer on. And someone asked the question, well, Bao, are you really upset when that happens? He says, no. He says, I'm only play acting 90% of the time. But he says, but Eruch is always play acting 100% of the time, meaning Eruch never loses his poise. And Bao's self-admittedly, maybe 10% of the time did lose his poise.
I like to say there were many pivotal moments in my life that came through seemingly casual remarks from Eruch. But this was something that happened in Mandalay Hall about in the mid-70s. I was young, I'd been with Baba for a while, but I'm in the middle of my youth. And I said to Eruch, we're all sitting around in Mandalay Hall, I said, Eruch, what if I went out to a party last night and it was a wild affair? I got drunk and I carried on. And I know Baba wouldn't have been real pleased. But that was what I chose to do that. Now this morning, I'm hungover. I feel miserable. I have a headache. I don't want to burden Baba with this. You know, this is something I chose, was of my own choice, the night before. Does Baba want me to give him my hangover? And Eruch said, yes. He was over there by the window with his arms folded, and he kind of looked down. He said, yes, give him your hangover. And the embarrassment of having such a meager gift to give your beloved will inspire you next time to have something more precious to offer him. But always give to Baba whatever you feel deep down. And I said to Eruch, but still, isn't that a burden to Baba? And he said, brother, it is a greater burden to Baba to withhold anything from him than to throw on him the worst of yourself. And that was emblazoned on my heart. It is a greater burden to Baba to withhold anything from him than to throw on him the worst of yourself. And so Baba has gotten the good, bad, and ugly of me over all these years. But it creates a great camaraderie. But that was, for a young person, that was so invaluable.
My story, 1979, I was sitting with Eruch. I stayed behind with Eruch in Manley Hall. I was feeling really upset. I was only young, 24, and I said to Eruch, everybody here seems to love Baba and speak with confidence about their relationship with him. And I just feel, very insignificant, and I don't love him very much. And then I said to Eruch, do you still see Baba? Does he walk around the corner? Do you see glimpses of Baba now he's not in the body? And Eruch said, yeah, I see him all the time. And I said, oh, was he walking around the corner? What's he wearing? Is his hair long? Is he young, old? He said, I see him all the time. I see him in all of you. In all of you. It totally knocked me out. It links in with that story earlier that I think it was Michelle said. I see him in all of you. Seeing Baba's divinity in all of us. We don't see it. But yeah, I found that very moving. Thank you.
Made by my husband of Eruch uncle. You all might have experienced. See, whenever we used to meet Eruch uncle and embrace him, my God, such a peace, coolness, I cannot describe. Fantastic, wonderful. If by meeting Eruch uncle we feel such a nice feeling, so how it must be in Baba's embrace. Naturally, I had Baba's darshan many times, but I don't remember any embrace because I was a child up to 7 years. Then another such incident, how meticulously Eruch uncle was dedicated till his last breath for the work. I have seen closely, and each and every small thing, and not to neglect anyone. I have seen, because I used to write letters. We used to write letters. And once it so happened that I visited him in the trust house, trust office. And such a simple place he used to, such a great work he was doing, but such a simple corner he used to sit in the trust office. I was astonished to see that. And then he said, oh, you are writing letters, very good, very good. Bring that letter, he told someone. And then those days there were inline letters in India. And there used to be small margins all the four sides. And I used to write all the margins horizontally, vertically, cross, this, that, PS. So he said, I find it so difficult, Meher Krupa, how you are writing. You are not leaving an inch of paper place, and I find it very difficult to read. So I made the correction next my letter. And later, I think those were the days it was not so crowded, and we used to be with them, the whole family, the whole day in Mehrazad. They used to ask us name, dance, sing, and all that. And then later he was over flooded with the letters. And then one fine day, one letter, he used to reply all the letters. And one fine day I received a letter. A real friend is that who do not write letter. And then after that, I stopped writing. That is very late, means after this thing. And then I came to know that he has developed cataract and such a big glass he is wearing. And it was very much concern for me. And those days we were not those smart that what is the system and all that. But just I got my mother's eye operated, so I suggested him. I wanted him to get it operated, and I was ready to do everything, whatever is required. Those days we were staying in Bombay. And I wrote a letter that, uncle, your eye is so much troubling. So I want to you get for the eye operation. And he gave such a beautiful reply. See, Meher Kripa, these eyes have seen Meher Baba. Now nothing more I wish to see. And then the matter was closed there only. And when you see so much they were caring and keeping small and minutest details in their mind. We lost our brother, and he was the only brother. He was staying in Khushru quarters. Adi Kaka had given him place to stay in Khushru quarters. And then he was doing in engineering, and he had his darshan samadhi, and then he went to Baba. So, and then, so my mother, though she was so much loving Baba and is loving Baba, but that period, she was 2-3 years very much suffering and used to get unconscious and all that, but naturally only son. So I was staying in Ahmednagar behind, just near to trust office only, not very far from trust office. And my mother came to see me there from Pathardi. And the moment Eruch uncle was in the trust office, I was in a bank. I was not there in the room. But when he came to know that Sushila Bade has come here, who had just lost her only son, because my mother, father, they are long since 1950s, they are with Baba. Both are there in Pune now. But the moment Eruch uncle came to know that Sushila has come, through his busy schedule, he made it a point. He came to that Mugabai Pandya's Vada, Ramchandra Khuntam, near Meher Taylor's house. There is a room I had hired, and my mother was there. Eruch uncle came and met her there. So and once I asked him, uncle, I'll say, I have a doubt whether to ask Baba something. Many have this question or doubt in their mind, whether we should ask something from Baba or we should request for something from Baba. Baba, give me this or that, and this type. Okay. Now we are studying, we are reading, we have different this thing, analyzing. And that time I remember Eruch uncle had very clearly told, asking something from Meher Baba is like a crucifixion to him. Very clearly he said, Christ was crucified. If you ask something from Baba, it is like a crucifixion. That is what at least to me he has told. Whereas Meramai used to say that you should tell Baba, you should ask from Baba. These are different these things. Then once it so happened, I had gone to see him in trust office. And then when someone came to see him and they told that they had Baba's dream and this and that. Once they left, he is asking, Meher Kripa, he is telling he has Baba's dream. Is it true? I don't believe. I never, so we were so close to Baba. We had served Baba. We have served Baba so much. We never have Baba's dream. I never have Baba's dream. And I was astonished. And I was looking at him. I was wondering, because I used to have wonderful, beautiful, so nice dreams of Baba. It was such a pleasure. And I thought, how come he is telling that he don't dream of Baba? I said, oh, I dream often and it's so nice to meet Baba in the dreams. So casually I told, oh, but that is the mistake I feel I did, because after that, believe me, till now I didn't have a single dream of Baba. And I feel so sad why I revealed it to him. So these are few, there are many more, but thank you so much for allowing me to open my heart. And Jai Baba to your dear Eruch uncle, and Jai Baba everyone. Thank you, thank you.
Well, first of all, I just want to say that I'm so flooded with so many memories of Eruch. I'm almost like, I don't even know where I could begin to share the most poignant ones, because Eruch was my main, you know, like everybody had a certain really special connection, those of us who got to be around the Mandali. And for me, Eruch's influence in my life was nothing short of profound. I mean, he was so welcoming and kind to me over the years, because I was married to Robert Dreyfus, who had like, you know, such a deep connection with living there in the Mandali. And I always often felt like I'm just sort of in the shadows, and Eruch would always just welcome me and pull me in, and he would tease me, and he was so loving toward me. And he gave me so many opportunities to feel closer to everybody in the Mandali, and taught me so much. I was so young when I first started going there. I really always felt like Eruch was the reparenting of all my wounded places. And I used to literally, I went to India 20 times over the years and met Eruch and spent a lot of time with Eruch over those years. And I used to literally dream of Eruch every night for many, many years. And one time I was in the trust office with Devana and Eruch, and he was teasing me, saying, because I was so close to Devana, and he was teasing me saying, "You must dream of her every night." And I said, "Well, actually, no, Eruch, I dream of you every night." And his response was so perfect. He just looked at me and he said, "Oh my." And that was all he said. But it was true. And I dreamt of him every night until he died. And then the last dream I had of him was literally, he said goodbye to me, and I've never dreamed of him since. So there was some sort of very, very deep connection I had with Eruch. But just a couple of little memories that I'll share. One, just to respond to something that Mayor Cooper said. My daughter, who was at the time, I think she was 6, and she would, you know, Eruch was always so sweet to my kids, but she one time went up to Eruch and she would give him these big hugs. And one time she just was giving him this big hug, and she was all wrapped up with Eruch, and she said, "Oh, Eruch," she said, "hugging you is the closest thing to hugging Baba." And it was like out of the mouth of babes. And Eruch, again, his response just was, "Oh my." It was so beautiful, but it was so true. When you hugged Eruch, it was like there was such purity that I used to also think the same thing, that what if this is what it's like to hug Eruch, what must it have been like to hug Baba, you know, just. And then the other memory I'll just share, really at the end of his life, I was there 2 weeks before he passed. And at that point, Eruch was he wasn't the same. I mean, he was already kind of half gone. There was a lot of vacancy in his face. I have a couple pictures, but he was in and out. But when I had first arrived, he was in his, you know, he wasn't coming out to the hall because he was in bed. And I thought I might not see him. I was having flashbacks to the time with Mani when I never did get to see her. And I was having such very sadness and fear, because I wanted to go in his room and greet him. And Shelley kept saying, "No, you know, you can't go, you can't go." And so I felt so sad. And I remember one day I was sitting in Mandali Hall and just listening to Marwan was speaking, and somebody came up and tapped me on the back, and they said, "Come." And I went, and I went outside. I can't even remember who it was, to be really honest. And they said to me, "Eruch wants to see you." And I was just like, oh, and I cried. And I walked into his room, and he was laying on his bed. And I just remember walking in, there was a few people in there, and Eruch was laying there, and he had his arms up like this. And I just went over to him and I embraced him, and he just held me. And it was just like my Baba just answered my heart's longing for that trip, you know, and I did get to see him because he did come out a little bit later toward the end of the trip, but it was such a profound memory that I got to have that chance to say, really like, say goodbye to him when he was still very present, you know. So that was, you know, he was just beyond words is what I could say about Eruch. So, I mean, I'll just share really quickly. These were my last couple of days with him, just saying goodbye to him. This was one day at Marisite. I don't know if you could see it, having tea, and he was like so childlike at that time. And this was literally the moment I said goodbye when I was leaving. And Devana took a picture of it, and I couldn't believe I'll never forget that embrace. He just said, "I'll miss you," and I said, "I'll miss you too." And that was the end. That was the last time I saw Eruch. That was literally 2 weeks before he passed.
This is not necessarily a direct Eruch story, but I heard him relate this story many times of his coming to Baba. And you know, Gaimai's reaction, like Judy was saying, really struck me many times. One of the things I really remember her saying is that if we held on to him, we would have had a chance of losing that grip. But when he himself holds on to us, there is no chance of losing that grip. And I think Eruch always mentioned that because it applies to all of us, especially. I have felt that in my own life. I definitely had many reasons to just leave him a lot of times, and it's definitely that he is the one holding us that made it possible to just keep on holding to him.
I feel blessed to have such a great personality like Eruch in my life. And my first encounter with Eruch was in 1960, when I was peeping into Baba's room through the window. And somehow I really appreciate Eruch's love, dedication to Baba. He was really got angry. He comes out, he catches me by the collar. He got really angry, and his sense of service to Baba. Of course, later on, he comes and loves me and kisses me. And since then, we become really close friends. He has given me name Viju. Nobody has called me with that name, but I really been experienced. He's not dead for me. He's alive, very much alive. Such a strong personality, I cannot forget. Of course, Baba, we don't want to forget. How can we forget? Eruch, beautiful Manli. So, and now I will make it short. Everybody talked about his humility, and but Eruch, I will talk about his bravery, fearlessness, and daring. Once it so happened during Amar Tithi, it was one Westerner. I don't recall the name. And he was there, and he scared all women mandali. And he said that Mehra is my consort. So the women mandali were scared, and then he was sitting on a stage. I was also there. And then Peter Booth goes near him. He was like a karate expert. So he just threw him down, Peter Booth, such a strong person. But then Eruch goes to him, and he controlled him very nicely, fearlessly. He goes near him, and then he took him out and handed over to the police. So that story I remember. And Of course, his whole night during Amar Tithi, he used to tell us the stories, Maharaja, the stories, and how can we forget? Alobaji, he used to call him Baba speaks through Eruch. He is the mouthpiece of Baba. And as Alisa said, that we really, and so many, that we felt his love, and he was so loving, like embracing Baba, his touch. So that we feel blessed, and I am so thankful to Baba and meeting Eruch, and my salutation to him. Jai Baba. I will be telling my stories this Saturday, so in more detail, but just to make it short. Thank you. Jai Baba.
Well, as we know, Eruch would spend hours in the old days just sitting there in Mandalay Hall telling stories. And it was amazing how much energy he had.
Yeah.
And I spent summers of 77, 78, and 80 for months in India. So I remember one day he was apparently tired, and there was somebody in the hall, and he turned to this fellow, I don't recall who he was, and he said, "So why don't you tell us your story?" And the fellow said, "Well, Eruch, I'm very shy. I don't want to tell the story." And Eruch said, no, brother, you tell us the story. And he said, no, Eruch, I'm very shy. There's about 20 people in the room. And this went on for a little bit. And finally, after a bit, Eruch said, brother, he got a little firm. He said, I'm very tired. Please tell us your story. Because he would get worn out telling stories hour after hour. Now, I remember my first trip in 73. In those days, Eruch would take us to the Ellora Caves. Perhaps some of you went to the Ellora Caves with Eruch. And I remember one special scene there we went, and we were in the Buddha Cave. You recall the Buddha Cave? It's a kind of an empty cave, but there's a big statue of Buddha there. And it sounds quite remarkable. And Debbie Peterson now, sang the Gujarati Arti, and it was a very special moment. Also, too, for those of you who recall it, Eruch would take us up Seclusion Hill, and he would tell us stories when we would walk up, and also when we were at the top of all the transactions that occurred over Baba's time there. Now, on a personal note, in the late 70s, Arnavas must have felt bad for me. She would call me to this far end of the veranda and spend a couple hours a day with me. And sometimes people would go in the hall, and she and I would be the only ones sitting out there in the veranda. And I remember on 2-3 occasions, Eruch came out and said, Alan, what are you doing? Everybody's in the hall. And I'd say, but I'm sitting with Arnavas. And he'd say, I want you in the hall. And I'd say, but I'm sitting with Arnavas. And then she would look at me and go, the way she would do that with her hands, doesn't matter. She would go like that. Doesn't matter. You go in with Eruch. But what I appreciate was that he noticed his sense of detail, which he got from Baba, obviously, was utterly precise. He noticed that I wasn't in the hall. So that was very sweet of him. Now, in 77, I went up to Kashmir, and this got Mani and Eruch very excited. And for about 2 weeks prior to the trip, I was going up north with a couple other guys, Phil Hellinger and Alan Connie, but they weren't going to Kashmir. But they were so excited because there had been a big article in like the Look magazine, or Life magazine of India, about Christ dying in Harbin in Kashmir. And even though Baba hadn't been particularly specific about it, he put his thumb on the area. Both Eruch and Mani were very happy because they were hopeful that I would do some investigation of the situation. So I spent about, off and on at Mirzad, about 2 weeks going through it with them. And I came back, we did come back later in a couple of weeks, and had to report back to them what I had learned. The final little vignette I'd like to tell is in 1988, I was working very hard. I had 3 little children, and we were in Myrtle Beach, and Kitty asked me if I could bring my son Matt, who just turned 39, but he had just turned 7 then, to India. And surprisingly to Karen, I agreed to do it. And I took Matt to India for a couple weeks. And I remember when we came to the trust, of course they knew we were coming. And this is at the beginning when 7-year-olds would come. And we went into the trust, and then we went to the back room outside where Eruch's, quote, office was, for those who remember. He actually wasn't a member of the trust, but he somehow worked there all the time. Interesting turn of events. And when we got to the back there of the trust room, Matthew gleamed on Eruch like they were the oldest friends in the world. I have many pictures of this with my children, but I remember this because I didn't take a picture of this one. It was unexpected. Matt was utterly tired from the trip, obviously. He was only 7. And he hugged Eruch's right leg, because that's about as high as he can get, and held him on, and Eruch hugged Matthew like they were old friends. It was very, very touching to me as a father and obviously friend of Eruch. I want to say one further thing. We got married in 1979, and after I took the bar exam in late July, early August of 1980, Karen and I went to India for numerous weeks, months. And as we were leaving, I think Karen tells me, Eruch told her, "Don't try and change Alan." And in the other room, she's laughing. And I'm sure that advice, if I could speak candidly here, lasted up to maybe 30, 45 seconds. But every now and then I put it out there in the hope that I will move along. Anyway, I just want to say about Eruch, he was unique. He was a gem. He was really, like as Baba said, matchless. His hugs, for me, unlike Elisa's, were very manly. He was a very manly person. And I remember my friend Ursula saying about the men Mandali, Arch, Adi particularly, and Padre, those were men. So we, the men of us who knew them and grew in Baba, were able to see what a real man was: the discipline, the will, the strength, the courage, the surrenderance, and the manly quality of strength. He gave his entire life to Baba, and for that, all of us who had the honor of meeting him, the opportunity of meeting him, were greatly blessed.
We first met Eruch through Francis Brabazon, going to India with him as a group in January 1973, on Francis's and my birthday, 24th of January 1973. A sweet story I've told a lot before is as we got out of our group bus, we went as a group, the Sydney and Queensland and Melbourne people. As we got out of the bus, Francis said, "Now be on your best behavior and don't bother them and don't say too much. Just listen, and you're about to meet a real man." So we went in, and the money greeted us, and then we were invited into Baba's Mandali Hall at Marizad, and Eruch just looked at us all like, because we were kind of an odd lot. We kind of didn't look like the Americans. We didn't look like the Indians. We were old. We were young. Many of us were incredibly fashionable because we worked for Mayher Handcrafts and were Indian importers. We were the most peculiar looking group around Francis. And Eruch kind of looked at us all and said, "Well, how on earth did you all come to be connected with a real man?" So we had the real man was this man and the real man was that man, and that's how these two men adored and saw each other, as real men. We too went on the We had a lot of access because it was the first time Francis had been back to India since August 1969. And Francis thought he was staying at the Ashoka Hotel with us, and Adi quickly grabbed him and put him at Marizad with the Mandali back in his old room. So we had a lot of access going every day for 2 weeks because Francis was back, and he had us learn all these songs, special songs as a group to sing. We were sort of musical. We did music plays and so on. So Eruch took us to a lot of the sites to do with Baba, and then we all got on the bus with 2 naughty stowaways, Stu and Georgia and Erskine, stowed away with us all the time. Stu quickly working out these people have all this access. And we went to Allura and to the land of 1,000 saints on the bus with Eruch. We were all like little puppies, just waiting for Eruch to roam up and down this bus and pat us on the head or say something sweet. I think most of us were in tears. We had never met anyone ever like the Iranis and Parsis and their soft, lovely nature and their soft, beautiful skin and the way they it seemed like when they met you, they could do what the Native Americans used to do. They could slash your wrist and theirs, and you were blood. You were instantly blood with the Mandali and the Avatar. You were so included that you were blood. And we stayed in a private hotel, and every morning at about 5:30, Eruch would come along to each room and go, "Jai Baba, toast and tea. Jai Baba, toast and tea. Jai Baba, toast and tea," on each door. And we'd come out and have toast and marmalade and tea at this gorgeous private hotel. And he was so loving with the owners and the people, and he'd help serve the toast and tea. These all seem to be around eating. Oh, and another one, when we got to Zazari Zabash, there were all these green bangles. And I know it seems amazing, but I'm actually 5 foot. Many people think I must be tall, but I'm tiny. So I wanted to reach up and get some of the green bangles. And my tall husband was sort of always at the back because he was tall and always filming with fancy cameras. He was the man that did all the Mandali Moments films that we have now. Anyway, so Eruch sort of pushed me forward and I couldn't reach him. So he reached up and grabbed me 5 or 6 of these green bangles, which means you'd be married. But I was already married. But I put them on quickly and he said, "Oh, many marriages." Those who know me will be amused by this statement. Anyway, always lovely Baba men. Who learned a lot from me. Anyway, on coming back, we got back to Marizad and Eruch said, "See how simple and clean it seems here?" And it was like all that ritual and all of those places were divine. You could feel that, well, not that we knew, we were so young, but that special feeling of all those saints and the land of 1,000 saints and so on. But Eruch was so simple and so pure and so loving, and it was also ordinary. It was just like this favorite cousin you'd always had, you know, or uncle. I mean, they were the oldest people I think I knew, the Mandali. At this point, they're like 15 years younger than me, but at the time, they seemed like old uncles, you know. And when we got back, we had organized another singing, and it was a half an hour piece, but it was Amatithi, but we were allowed to do that piece, singing to the Eternal Beloved, because it was 40 of us. And Eruch insisted on this, that, well, it's 40 people's 5-minute slot. And we did the whole of a singing to the Eternal Beloved with the Mandali weeping, and because they hadn't heard it since Baba's 68th birthday. Many, many, many years later, one of the Butte things, a couple of the Butte things was we were incredible hippies, and someone said to Eruch, "What's the most important thing in a relationship?" Now we're talking half this group had been hippies, but come to the abode and given all that up and got jobs again, being around Francis's influence of get that ticket, get that degree, get that job, get it together. Very practical, Saturnian type of person. Anyway, where was I when I interrupted myself? Oh, yeah, so someone said, what's the most important thing in a relationship? And Eruch said, money. Well, half the group nearly blacked out. You know, we were hippies. Capitalism, money, what do you mean? So John Borthwick says, and why is that, Eruch? Very calmly. And Eruch said, because in the end, in that relationship, it just changes hands every 3 minutes. It just keeps changing hands all the time. And if you can't agree on that in the beginning, you're going to be in real strife in the end. Another boy asked, if you don't like intimate stories, please mute me at this point. Am I celibate if I masturbate, Eruch? I mean, this is the stuff Eruch had to go through. But as you know, he went through it completely calmly, like it was having a piece of toast with marmalade jam. And Eruch just sort of gazed into space and then looked back at everybody and said, when on earth will we stop obsessing about a teeny flap of skin? Another story that comes to mind is Eruch said, do you have a question? I was a bit quiet. I was married to a very powerful man at the time, especially in the barber world, making all these films and things, Stephen Hine. And Eruch said, do you have a story, a question, Rainey? And I just sort of stared into space, and I was a gemologist. And I said, I often have wondered if diamond, being the hardest known substance in the universe, is the firstmost stone or the lastmost stone. And so Eruch looked at Francis like, where do you get these people? I was like, for goodness sake, this kid is asking me this question. I mean, how many millions of years were a stone, you know? He said, I actually don't know the answer to that question, Rainey, but I'll think about it and I'll tell you what I think tomorrow. So the next day, everyone is in the room again, and he says, Rainey, I thought about the question last night. I have to think that diamond, being the hardest substance in the known universe, would be the last, in Baba's compassion, it would be the last most stone, that you could experience all your stone states before you were stuck for so long in such unusual circumstances to become powder and get out of stone state. And then he told the story about the snakes, that the snakes, you know, if you kill a snake and say Baba, you'll break that unending cycle of being a snake. The other thing I wanted to say was, because he passed recently and I felt it was a little unnoticed, was a 69 Darshan person called Jeff Tangway, who was an amazing blues composer, an incredible, he was bass guitarist, I believe. Hannah, Debbie Peterson knows more about his past than I do. But anyway, he actually wrote an Eruch song. And it's very unusual to have an Eruch song. And I asked him, could I sing it? He said, oh, yes, it's just a simple song. In fact, you can have it. And I said, well, I'm going to put it on a tape. Do I have permission? He said, yes, you have permission. I said, you have it. And you might remember it's that he was sitting in Mandalay Hall at 69 Darshan, in Pune at Guru Prasad, and he just couldn't take his eyes off Eruch. And all of a sudden, it came to him, how on earth is he doing this? He's been with this man, he's been his voice, he's been his whole expression for all these years. How is he sitting here in front of all of us and with such poise? And this song came to him, and it's the song that says, always had you there, just sitting in your chair. Now you're gone, but I'm not there. They say you're still around, but you're easy to be found. So I guess I must be wrong, but I miss you just, it's got all these other touching verses, but that just came to him at the 69 Darshan, trying to imagine how on earth Eruch was doing what he was doing. Jai Maya Baba.
It's lovely hearing all of you, and I'm grateful to bring Eruch alive for me and to everybody around through this program. So somebody shared about the handwriting. It was, I think, Palwe Bade, who said that she used to write inland letters to Eruch, and that reminded me of my mother writing letters to Eruch, which he was supposed to read to Baba. And he was also a reader to Baba. So he used to read most of the letters correspondence that used to go to Baba. And my mother used to write letters right from Ahmednagar to Baba, and Eruch had to read them. So whenever we met him, of course, I was a small boy, but Eruch would tell my mother, how difficult it was for him to read my mother's handwriting. She really had a bad handwriting. And when he was trying to read the letter in front of Mer Baba, he had a hell of a time trying to read her handwriting. And he would always tell her, I wish you could write in clearer handwriting so that it would be easy to read your letter to Baba. And of course, everybody has spoken about his loving nature and how he was concerned of our well-being, because this was from the 50s onwards till he passed away. He always had an interest in our well-being. And then somebody talked about Bindra House. I think it was Jyoti Bade. And so as a child, I remember going to Bindra House with my father, and he was very keen to go to Bindra House, and we used to go, and there used to be a parrot there, and as a child I used to play with the parrot, and of course we used to meet all Eruch's family there in Bindra House. And you see, it was during most of the time, my first phase of meeting Eruch was during Baba's time, right? So it was when I was from the age of 4 to 16, 1958 to 69. And but Eruch used to be the middle person. I mean, almost invisible, but he used to be in all our Baba stories and of everybody else. Eruch was between Baba and the Baba lover, because he was interpreting Baba's silence and Baba's communication through the gestures. And that's how all our stories, not only mine, but everybody else's stories of Baba are actually coming through Eruch. And then what I'm drawn to is anybody who has not had an encounter with Eruch, and if he happens to go to Merazad, if he spends few moments in the cabin that was used by Eruch as his room, you can very easily sense the simplicity of this man. That room is, the simplicity in that cabin room of Eruch is so attractive and so attracting. I'm always reminded of that as I live my life now, and I wish I could live that simply, And of course, Eruch, I remember quite vividly when we used to go to Guru Prasad during Baba's time, and when we were not able to be in front of Baba, we would be in veranda, and also Eruch would be in veranda doing some or the other work. And there was an unusual piece of furniture in the Guru Prasad veranda. It was a seating arrangement with a square cube on top, where on the 4 sides people could sit on all 4 sides and put their backrest on that cube. And then there was the seat. cushion on which, you know, they could, so it used to be there on that seating space that we would sit around Eruch and see him do whatever work he was doing for Baba. And finally, I would just want to say that, you know, as Baba has said, God is not to be discussed or God is not to be theorized. God, you cannot, you know, just through reading, you cannot get across to God. The best way to get across to God is to try to live God, right? That's what Baba has said. And Eruch was the one who lived God. And Baba enabled him to do that. And it's little wonder that we have such loving memories and we miss him so much because he used to live God. Right. Yeah, that's all I feel like sharing. Thank you.
Well, my first trip to India was around 1972, was with the society. I won't go into a lot of the details of that trip, but basically Anna Rosa, which some of you might have met, was the head of the society at that time. And she was trying to convince me not to be an actor, which I am to this day. And she said Baba hated actors and so forth. And she said, and if the Mandali found out about it, they'd toss me out on my ass. And because Baba forbade people to be actors. Anyway, so I didn't talk to the Mandali for my whole time there. It was like several weeks because I didn't want, you know, I didn't want to be thrown out of there. And so just as I was leaving on my final day, walking toward the bus, I heard Eruch calling me. Oh, miss, I didn't get to speak to you. What do you do? And I started crying. I said, you know, I'm sorry to tell you this, Eruch, but I'm an actor. And he's like, oh, very, very nice. Baba loves actors. And I said, but Anna Rosa told me he hated actors and I should give it up and become a file clerk. And he just looked at me and he said, went like this, every family has a crazy relative. So I just want to share that. I didn't take Anna Rosa's advice. I took Eruch's advice.
Yeah, that is a very, very special moment. And I had a lot of so strong courage for this one. In 1998, when I was visited to Mehrabad during Diwali vacation, I have some very much frustration in my life, or the very anxiety and very some environment is not so much happy on that one. I visited my town to my parents, and then I come back to the Mehrabad, and then I stayed Mehrabad and the I visited Mehrazad. So that in the 1998 that the rules has come that nobody has embraced Baba Mandali, or if you have this cough and cold was there, then don't meet or don't embrace of that one. So I was in the line to meet the Eruch uncle and all this the Mandali of that one, and meet Baba's and Baba's room and all these, and my daughter was with me, and she is also running here and there, and I pick up her, and all these things are going on. So when my turn has come, the Eruch uncle asked me, how are you? And I said, I'm okay. So you are not happy? But no, I'm not happy. And talking in Marathi with him. So I told I am happy, but I'm not such as extent at that happy, but I'm so much this one. So then he started talking with my daughter, how is mama, how is mama's job, and everything is there and all that one. And then people are going here and there, and then he called me again and he asked me, come here now, nobody is looking at that, we will embrace. And at that moment Dhamma has come, And Ravana said, no, Eruch, you should not. And then he asked me, then I told him that I feel that I'm going long, and I think I have this very much distancing with Baba. I feel that I'm going long. I'm going away from Baba, and that feeling is very much restless for me, and it's very much restless. And I don't think that I can come out from this feeling and all this, and it's very strong feeling is there. Maybe I may be very much immersed in my physical or materialistic life, or I cannot take Baba's name or something like that, and just like that, and I cannot come out, and that feeling is very much hurting me. It's very much this one. And then he says, okay. Sorry. Then he says, one foreigner was standing with with him, and he had just tapped his hand to that foreigner's shoulder, and he talked. He then embrace Meherjyoti very tightly, give your full of love to her, and embrace her. And then she embraced me very tightly in Baba's sing, and like this and that. And it's very much touching of that one. And when she was embracing, Eruch's hand was on her shoulder, like that. And after that, we met everyone, and then we went to the Mandali hall. We sat there. Then Baba's films have started. But the experience I got during that Mandali hall, that was very, I got the experience like that. I was seeing Baba's face in everyone's face, and all this my films Baba's was there, and all this Eruch uncle's face, others' face, my daughter's face, everyone's face, Baba was there. And it's so that the experience is very new for me. Experience was very amazed that I'm not in that position to understand what is it's going on. I'm not that position, it's that way, but I'm just enjoying Baba everywhere, Baba. And then I started to crying, and I did not have any attention of Baba's film, Kunsa film, what film is going on, and don't know. And just when I started crying, and then my daughter, she felt very embraced. What's going on? What's happened to Mama? And then everybody has gone out, and the film is over. And then Eruch uncle came to my daughter. He asked to my daughter, what's Mommy's going? Is she going to job? Is she cooking properly for you, or something like that? And this and that. And I don't have any sensation of that one. And in that situation, I went to the Mera Bath. And when I started to drink tea, I saw Baba in tea. When I started to eating bread and butter or something, I saw the bread and butter. In the Mehrabad mosquito net was there. All the Baba's faces are all in the mosquito net, and throughout the Samadhi, till the Samadhi, for coming the Samadhi, and my daughter was looking after me, and she's so small is there. She's just 8-year-old, but she felt something like that. So this and that the grace, or that Eruch uncle has given me the blessings, or the Baba has given me blessings till today. And whenever I felt alone, whenever I felt very helpless, whenever I felt very lonely, whenever I felt like that, Baba showed me somewhere else. Baba showed me in tea. Baba showed me till today. Baba showed me in teapot. Just now I just started to eat something like that, and thinking 3 and that. And I felt very, very, this was just listening all of your lovely stories and experiences and meeting Eruch personally, physically. So that's the, yeah.
So I first heard of Eruch in 1969, and he was described as the ideal man. And so I really wanted to meet him, and finally did in 1974. But this was, the time when feminism were getting very angry at men. And Eruch was so, I think Eruch kind of has helped save us from that. I hope. He influenced my relationship with my father, who was a World War II Army captain, part of that invasion of France and all of that, and not an easy dad at times. And through Eruch, without going into detail, my father and I got a lot closer because of Eruch's advice or suggestions. But the other thing is that I've often wondered, how did Baba make an Eruch? What kind of past lives did he have? Like, there could be no one who was more of a Knight Templar or an incredible sultan or, just somebody who's had great power. And maybe he has a lot of compassion because he's gone through a lot of lifetimes of misusing it. And I think, so what does it take to make an Eruch? And then I'd notice how, hope I'm not going to backbite. This can't be backbiting because you guys can all tell this person. So, but Eruch just loved Gary Kleiner. And I used, think, why does he love Gary Kleiner so much? And then I think I was there when Eruch said that, because Gary is so like him. And then I remember one MRTC that because, I had 8 cousins. And so I was used to guys sort of like Gary. And it didn't really bother me. Gary's just very much himself. And he would never let anyone intrude on that. And I thought that was incredible. And I could respect that. And once I was riding my bike down Maribod Hill, it was Amartithi, and it was early in the morning. And I went down, I think it was after the women did Arti. And I wanted to find Eruch, and I went down, and there was this this building back in the Pilgrims' Quarters, and that's where all the guys were. And so I rode past that, and Eruch came out to say hello, and Gary was with him. And I'll tell you, it was like a million diamonds. And I realized, all the men that were with Eruch, including Gary, and there was this wonderful radiance, and I could feel, that thing of one of the ways to draw close to God is to spend time with those who are with them. And that we just don't know we don't know personalities, we don't know character, don't know ego even. Just being close to these people and talking about them the way we are now is just, it's just a gradual process, but it really helped me, I would say, learn to really love my father and make peace with him. And two other short things. So I had a dream after Eruch died that I was talking to Devana, and Devana's quite beautiful and wonderful to talk to. And I was getting kind of caught up. And Eruch came into the room, and he told me, he said, Jill, only look, and then I looked at Eruch, and he was so beautiful. I just wanted to look at him. And Eruch said, Jill, just look at Baba. And I thought that was one of the greatest things about him, that he was always turning us to Baba. But then I want to end with some kind of stupid light thing, because, there's a lot of problem with, so when do we have to give up what we want? And when, is it maybe something that Baba's okay with? So when I worked at the trust, we got to have tea with Eruch back at that table. And Rustam Falhadi had this diet, and he was getting people on this diet. And he kind of scared me to get onto the diet. So I was basically eating nothing but rice and dates, which was not healthy for me. And then Rustam said I needed to give up chai. So I went to tea with Eruch, and this was a really big thing. And I thought, okay, I've got to give up my enjoyment of chai. I'll just sit with Eruch. I'll have a wonderful tea. I'll be in Eruch. I don't need the chai. And so the people brought the chai out and served it to everyone. And it came to my turn, and I said, no, thank you. And Eruch stared at me and Jill, you don't want chai? And I said, no. And I said, I think Rustam was there. And I said, well, you know, it's not good for my health. And Eruch kind of it was a sort of a long, silent look. And then he said, Jill, will you not keep company with me? And so that was great. I just started smiling again, and I had several cups of chai with Eruch. And I just wanted to mention that last because it wasn't like giving up everything to be with Eruch. It was like finding out what's worth fulfilling and what isn't. And then he would always turn us to Baba. So anyway, those are my stories.
Eruch Jessawalla was not keeping in good health, and he was like on and off. And last time, my intuition was very strong, wanting me to know I have to meet him. And somehow or the other, as usual, there were restrictions. You can't go and you can't meet him. But I remember I went through Manu's room and I met him. And the way he hugged me, he would call me my double rosas come. The way he would hug me, like I was literally taken aback. And he looked into my eyes and he very seriously told me one thing. Beroz, my double rose, take very good care of my Baba and be of his service. And it just shook me, and the overwhelming responsibility what he had given me, which I couldn't fathom me. And in my head, I'm thinking, who am I that who would be able to do God's work? I mean, I wasn't, it was a scary responsibility, but anyway, life and Baba paved its way. And he gave me, I think that same day itself, after I met him, I think that that day James Cox's weddings was there, second wedding was there. And I just didn't meet him, and I was about to go to Bombay. And I just heard that he is no more, he dropped his body. And I still remember I took Naju Kotwal with me from Bombay, and I again went for his funeral the very next day. And another very strong incident was when I used to go pretty frequently, and when Eruch would see me staying in Nagar for a very long time, he would say, "Arey Bapre, what happened? Is your job okay? Everything fine?" And I would, as usual, just humorously say, "All is well, but still I'm out of job and some crazy stuff has happened." And he patiently listened to all my story about it. And one day he just calls me and he says, he gives me a gift of a very beautiful envelope where Baba hair were there, which is loving words were there. And I had promised Eruch uncle that next visit of mine, I'll ensure that I'll give you a gift where you will, I will be happy to give you. And I remember handing over this gift, this Baba drawing sketch, which I had given it. This is the picture which I had given to Eruch uncle. And Eruch uncle said, I will put this in front of my room where Manu's room was. And no one is allowed to remove this picture. It has to be there forever. I have never felt that gratitude, immense love for me, for him accepting it. And that was a very overwhelming responsibility, and just the amazing love and selflessness, the acceptance of what he gave it to us with compassion and love. I mean, it's amazing. I still look forward to it, and it's still scary in a way where I feel, I hope I'm doing the right thing. I shouldn't miss anything. I shouldn't do anything wrong in God's work. So that always used to eat me up. But I think God gives you the strength to just go ahead and do what you have to do with utmost honesty and sincerity. I think that's about it. These are the two most important turning points of my life where I had been. I think I've been coming to Baba since 1986. And I mean, all the Mandali I had met, but I think I just missed out Mera Auntie. That thing. Otherwise, the rest, everyone, including Mohammed. And I'm grateful to Baba, and thank you very much all for listening. And I'm glad I shared this to you all. Thank you.
Well, when I think it was Jill or somebody said, Eruch always pointed us towards Baba, which of course we all agree on that. And I have a very specific way he did that for me one time. I was very excited about, I was coming back to India after a year or so, and I was very, very excited about seeing Eruch. And I was really kind of fixated on this, overly fixated on it. And I was taking the train, and all I could think about on the train was, I'm going to see Eruch tomorrow. And I walked into the hall, and Eruch's first words out of his mouth that time were, you know, it's a wonderful thing to love creation and appreciate creation, but not if it makes you forget the creator. So he busted me. Another time I was sitting in the hall in the 70s with Eruch, and there were two brothers in the hall, and Eruch looked at the two brothers and he said, this is so good to see. And then he looked at me and he said, next time you come, bring one of yours. So when I went back to America, I thought, oh my goodness, who in my family is going to want to come? And I polled all the members of my family, and my brother wasn't going to be the one, my mother wasn't going to be the one. My father said, I'll come. I'll come before I'm old and gray. And 10 years later, he said, this is the year, we're going to India together this year. And he had just retired from his work, and he was not that old, but he was in his late 60s. And we went around the world together, and we ended up at Merazad. And Eruch, and I don't think it was Eruch who asked him this question, but somebody asked him, why have you come? He said, I'm keeping a promise. I'm keeping a promise I made 10 years ago. And Eruch, they loved that. Because Eruch has said so many times, I've heard him say, we give our word very rarely, but we keep it when we give it. So they appreciated that in a Westerner. And Eruch turned to my father and said, we're very proud of her for bringing you. And has she told you about the coat that housed reality? That was beautiful. That was Baba's body on the hill. Has she taken you there? So those are two things that just came to my mind. I mean, there's so many. The last time I ever saw Eruch actually was shortly before he died. It was a month, I think, exactly before he died. And I was leaving with another girl. And he said to that girl, he said, when are you coming back? And she said, I'm coming back the 3rd week of September. And he said, no, come back the 1st week of September. She said, I can't. And I said, I can and I will. And I thought I'd be safe. And of course I was already too late. But I had given him a picture of himself with Baba that day. And my last image I have of Baba, of Eruch, is of him. He bowed down to that picture. So I had that memory. Baba's so thorough. He gives you everything you need. Even though I didn't get to be there for the end of Eruch's life, I felt it was completed by so many things in that image. And Mera Jyoti, I just want to say, your story moved me so much, so very beautiful. I could picture it perfectly, picture it and internally experience it. Very special. So many wonderful stories. Thank you, everybody.
Yes. Well, I've been thinking this whole time what to share. Nothing about Eruch uncle specifically comes to mind. Of course, the very first time I saw him was at the 1962 East-West gathering when I first met Baba. And of course, that sight of him bringing, Baba holding his arm and coming out onto the stage, that image will always be very vividly in my mind. And then through the years, of course, seeing him in Guru Prasad, at Mirazad also is with me. But just one little incident when we were one day climbing up the hill to go to Baba's Samadhi. It was in January and the weather was very cold, and we were, but us coming from New York, I mean, to us it was cold, but not so much that we were all bundled up. But so we were walking up the hill, and I didn't have anything on my head, and Eruch uncle came and tapped me on the head and says, "You need to put on a hat. You can't be walking around in this cold weather without a hat. You need a cap." A hat. That was it. But I very fondly, of course, we've been to Bindra House several times in Pune when I was younger with my family, and met all of his family, of course, Gaimai, and Dad, of course, had wonderful stories. And at one point, I believe in 51, if I'm not mistaken, that was prior to when I was here, he and Pendu had been ordered by Baba to come to Karachi, and they did. And Dad had hosted them and taken them around and had them meet all the Karachi group. And at one point I vaguely remember Dad telling a story about them being out on the water. For some reason, they had taken them in a rowing boat and they were out on the water. And something happened, and both Eruch and Pendu fell out of the boat and were in the water. But luckily it wasn't so deep, and although they were drenched from head to toe, they were quickly fished back up into the boat. I've been looking to see in my dad's book whether I could come up with that story. Their trip to Karachi is mentioned, but not this incident. But I remember Dad telling us about it, speaking about it. So yeah, Eruch uncle was just Eruch uncle. He was unique. What shall I say? Just unique in Baba's love and for who he was. So that's all I can remember. So Jai Baba.
Thank you. I just thought of something that I wanted to share at the end. Like I said, I saw Eruch the last 2 weeks. I was there right at the end of his life. I left on the 14th and he passed on the 31st. And during that time, he was not coming into the hall very much because he was quite disabled. He needed to be helped and supported, but he was trying to get in there as much as possible. And one memory that I have, and one of the things he was in the habit of saying, and I was there at one point when he came into the hall, and as he was leaving, and this was my last time seeing him in the hall, but according to Devana, he did this a few more times before he passed. But I'll never forget the way he was struggling to be carried, and he was walking out toward the door. And then suddenly he stopped, and he kind of pushed the people who were supporting him off a bit. And he turned with that manly quality that everybody's talking about. And he said, "Never forget, remember, he is the being of all beings." And then he's turned again, and then he turned back and he said, "The being of all beings." And that gesture and the way suddenly he was strong, and what the energy that came out of him was so powerful. And that was what, and I often think of that he is the being of all beings. And so I just wanted to share that because I was just remembering it. And like I said, Devana said that was the last thing he said in the hall. And he continued to say it every single time he went into the hall after that until he died. So let us all remember that as we remember Eruch, but he is the being of all beings. Meher Baba.
Over the years, I spent a lot of time in Mandalay Hall, and one of the beautiful things was just to marvel at how Eruch would respond to people and what he would say. And I got some of the things that you might find interesting. One time there was a guy in Mandalay Hall said, "Eruch, there's some people I just don't like." And some of the other people kind of nodded in acknowledgement. And Eruch very seriously said, you may dislike someone, but never assert that you have the right to dislike anyone. I don't know, were you able to hear that?
Yes.
It's audible. And then someone said, you know, Eruch, who am I to talk about Baba? Who am I to serve him? And Eruch, on a number of occasions, said, who are you not to talk about Baba? Who are you not to serve Baba? I mean, you just turn that around. And one time, this was like amazing, but one time Charles Haynes came with a group of students, but he also came with his partner at that time, a guy named Robert Love. And Robert Love, it was clear he didn't believe in Baba, but he didn't even believe in God. But he would come in, he would be in Mandalay Hall there, and you know, and all the stories and all the talk would go on, and and he was a good sport about it, you know. He was a lawyer actually, and but anyway, so a couple of weeks went by, and then one day, Eruch starts talking this way, kind of toward the end of the session. He says, "Well, I don't know if I believe in God. I don't know God. I don't experience Him." He starts talking like this, you know, and it went on for a while. And then afterwards, we stepped out of Mandalay Hall. I said to people, "Did I hear right? Did Eruch just say he didn't believe in God, doesn't know God? What?" I mean, you know, we were like amazed. But what it did is it brought this guy in. This guy, it included him. Even though it wasn't the truth on the verbal level, it was the truth because the love in it included this Robert Love, you know, and that type of thing. Then let's see, I'll describe the last time I was, the last thing that Eruch ever said to me. I had no idea that it was, but I used to go to India, and I would get together with Craig Ruff, who worked there in the trust compound, and he lived there, and there were all sorts of, you know, disharmonies and conflicts and everything in the trust. The Mandalay would come there to work during the week, but there were a lot of old lovers of Baba's and some of Baba's old Mandalay there, and it was, you know, there were problems there. And then I'm working at the center, and there were all sorts of conflicts at the center. There are always conflicts around Baba's places, but it kind of always disturbed me that we just didn't have the harmony at the center that I felt we should have, and Baba really emphasized harmony. I mean, we as a staff struggled with this, you know, and so Craig Ruff and I would get together every year, and we would compare notes, and he would tell me what's going on, the problems in the trust compound, and I would tell him, you know, the problems at the center. And so we were sitting just outside the trust office, just outside the door on a little table there, and we were doing our yearly kind of check-in, comparing notes. And we were kind of started, we'd been there a while, and then Eruch comes out. I think he's going down the veranda to answer a phone call, but he stops by us, and with this kind of this mock suspicious look on his face, like we were a couple of conspirators, he looks down at us and says, "What are you two guys doing?" And Craig pipes up and says, "Oh, Jeff's telling me about the problems at the center." Eruch looks down at me, and it came like, and what he said came from Baba through Eruch into my lap, and he said, "Jeff, are you still having problems?" And I got exactly what he said, but what he really said, I mean, I knew exactly. What he said, "Are you still having a problem with problems?" That was my problem. I was having a problem with the fact that we were having problems. Just deal, I mean, basically deal with the problems. And when you're kind of in a problem-free period, enjoy that. But don't just kind of have this whole campaign that's never going to be resolved. So I didn't realize those are the last words that he said to me, and I have not had a problem with the problems here since. I mean, there are problems, but I don't have a problem with that fact. So that was immensely helpful to me. And like I say, I felt it came from Baba through Eruch. This kind of tells you a little bit about Eruch. Now, I got this from Dan Ladinsky. One day, Dan Ladinsky said to Eruch, you know, you Mandali, you take a nip now and then. And Eruch says, what do you mean by that, Danny? No, you take a shot of his bliss. He says, what makes you say that? Well, I see it sometimes in the eyes of the Mandali. Eruch says, brother, he said, Danny, we're the chalices that hold the beloved's wine. Others may come and help themselves, but for us, we never take a drop. We are the chalices. That hold the beloved's wine. Others may come and help themselves, but for us, we never take a drop. What kind of person is that? Jay Baba, yeah.
When they talked about Eruch in Amartiti, Meher Krupa, and so I saw this picture. This picture came up. One of the main things that impressed me about Eruch was his caring personality. He had this great capacity of caring, and every time it was turned to anyone, but first to Baba. And when Baba passed away, then he was so caring to Mani, and just taking care of everything. Like I saw as if he was bringing up his wings to protect her, and he was in the terrace, always looking at what was happening with Mani in the office, and that impressed me a lot. And also in the Mandali Hall, when they had talks together. And the other one was his Amartiti. He was always never attracting people to him, always being so humble. But in Amartiti, he used to take the seat behind the cabin and sit there all night. And people used to come to hug him. And all night long, in the cold of the Amartiti, with a blanket over him, he would hug people, but he would not only hug them, but he would get up, stand, and hug them, and then another one, and then another one, and all night long it went on. So this very, very caring part of his personality was something that very, very impressed me, and deeply. So that's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
But I do remember that at one point he kind of grabbed me, or said he wanted to know who I was, and so we went into his room, which was the shed, the corrugated shed that was right next to the blue bus. And I remember sitting on the bed, and and I don't remember what he said. I just know, I remember the intent, which was like, well, okay, I want to know who you are and what you're about, and it was memorable for that reason alone. And then one other time, my whole family was there, and we were not always harmonious. We were there for a long time, about 6 weeks, and
I remember I was there with young kids who I always felt like I wasn't I wasn't strict enough. I wasn't a good enough mom. These Indian mothers had their children in line, and they all and mine were not quite. So I just was. I didn't live up to that. It was an issue, my issue there. And at one, I spent a long time with Bao, our family. He took our family in hand, and for some reason there was some incident where I was just distraught. I remember it was at the Kushru quarters, and is that right? And I was just weeping, and I turned around and ran to who I thought was Bao, but it was Eruch. And I remember he was just shining. He was in a kind of brown, it was like a coveralls or kind of a suit that, or not, like a mechanic would wear. And he just, of course he took me in his arms, and he didn't know anything about what was going on, but and that was just a moment. I don't remember that we talked about it or anything, but those are my Eruch experiences. Jay Baba.
To sit around and think of Eruch is just to endless stories. And I had the good opportunity to spend time there with him, like many of us. But one day, I happened to go up Seclusion Hill with him, and I forget who all was going, but there was quite a few. And I'd gone up there one other time with Eruch, and someone, so when we got up there, Eruch said, well, what do you know about Seclusion Hill? And this fellow raised his hand and he said, oh, Denny told us that, and so on and so on. And Eruch started laughing. He said, did you tell him that, Denny? And I said, yeah, I think I did. He said, well, I tell you what, listen close this time and maybe you'll get it right. And it was so humorous, like, oh my gosh, I'm afraid to ever say another story about anybody else's story. Anyway, that was the lightness too, the Eruch. I think he clapped me on the back, how Eruch should do sometimes. And he said, okay, I'll tell the story again. And so he did. And it was delightful to hear it the second time. Now, I'm not going to tell you how he told the story the second time, though. Jay Baba.
As I said, this trip up the hill and him singling me out in an indirect way. Since everyone else had gone, then he said, well, has anyone not gone up the hill? And it was me. And we got to go up the hill together, and it softened my feeling for Eruch and my trust. I became open to maybe talking to him. So I had that opportunity of going in the shed with him. And my story was this. I said, Eruch, all the people out there feel Baba and they love Baba, but I'm doubting what I believe. I'm doubting Mayor Baba. And everyone is just joyous in his love, and I feel like I'm just so completely alone. And he said, Mayor Baba is who he says he is. Just put that on the back burner. He said, make friends with your mind. Tell your mind how grateful you are that it has gotten you through your schooling and brought you into your career as a nurse, and that all these things have given you a home and food, and how grateful your mind you are to your mind for what it does every day. And then tell your mind that it will take you to Baba. Make friends with your mind. And so, of course, I stumbled out of that room and into the crowd of people, and it was a new experience for me. It helped me understand. I said, when I came to Baba, I came from my heart. My heart brought me to Baba. And now here's my mind trying to get involved, and it's just, it was not helping things. And that's when he said, make friends with your mind and tell your mind it will take you to Meher Baba. And my mind is slowly coming along for the ride with my heart these days. So I can't thank Eruch enough. Avatar.
Baba ki
Baba
Meher
Baba
ki
Jai.
Meher Baba ki
Jai.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you, Ruth.